Smell that? It's new hardware season. It's always a pretty exciting time to be a gamer when a new console is on the horizon. I always enjoy getting to see what kinds of games are coming up that'll push graphical fidelity to new heights. It turns out that PlayStation and Xbox are still trying to figure out the games part. But it's always extra special when a new Nintendo console is looming. Mostly because, well, they're always so damn far behind the competition graphically that getting to see their IPs with a fresh coat of paint is something pretty special. Granted, the last time there was any major leap for Nintendo was from the Wii to Wii U 12 years ago. But that didn't stop me from being excited for the Switch. I can't tell you how stupidly excited I was for the Switch. Got mine at launch and it's still going strong. Can't say the same for the amount of controllers that have crapped out on me. But 2017 was magical with a near constant stream of games coming to the system, capping it off with Mario Odyssey at the end of the year, which was the game I wanted more than anything. Stayed up all of launch night into Friday morning to beat the whole thing in one sitting and called off work. Worth it. Always call off work. The rest of the generation, it was fairly hit or miss for me. If you've been here for a while, you know I was definitely hard on Nintendo this generation. There's some stuff I still stand by, others not as much. I think I got to a point where Nintendo just wasn't offering the kinds of experiences I wanted anymore, and at the time I just wasn't being honest with myself about it, so I was frustrated and definitely made a bit of an ass out of myself at times. But you know, with a new system on the horizon, it's a chance for a fresh start. And whether I like it or not, I'm probably gonna have to grab one of these things at launch. It's been 7 years since the last 3D Mario. That shit is absolutely gonna be a launch title, and I know I'm not gonna be able to pass that up. However the Switch 2 library fills out after that, this is gonna be in their hands. I'm a lot more lax about my approach to Nintendo these days. You probably won't see me shitting and throwing up about Nintendo games in the future unless they really mess something up. There's just too many good games releasing at all times outside of Nintendo's wheelhouse for me to focus on instead. With that said, I've definitely been thinking a lot lately about the potential for games on the Switch 2, especially in terms of graphics. The last 2 years I've been doing a lot of gaming on beefier hardware and, well, it has made it very clear to me just how far behind Nintendo is. I'm not like a huge graphics snob or anything, you know, I tend to favor performance over graphical fidelity, but even then Nintendo struggles to cap at 30 FPS half the time, and the lack of anti-aliasing has become so much more clear to me, it bothers the shit out of me. So with rumors swirling that Nintendo's next system will be on par graphically with PS4, I mean, that's good enough to me. PS4 games look great. You know, imagine a Mario on par visually with God of War that you can take with you on the go. Count me in. Graphics in gaming are reaching an apex anyway. You know, these companies can't keep up with the high costs and long development times associated with more graphically intense games. So this may be the perfect sweet spot for Nintendo for some time to come. I hear you typing away. Al. Graphics, no. Gameplay. I hear you. And I agree with you. As a matter of fact, that's what this video is about. The games, not the graphics. For my money, I think Nintendo really needs to work on expanding their range of games going into the next system. This is going to be a rather opinionated video, you know, discussing games that would be of great interest to me personally going into the next generation. Whether or not any of these would light the sales charts on fire is anyone's guess, not my job. Now obviously, Nintendo released a ton of software on Switch, the greatest volume of output that I've seen in a long time, maybe even ever. I was on the Wii U train from the very start till the very end, okay, so I think I know what I'm talking about here. If you were a Nintendo fan at the time, it was a rough time. Looking back at the library of games on Switch, it's clear that they relied heavily on their bigger IPs to fill out the software lineup. Franchises like Mario, Zelda, Pokemon and Kirby were pretty substantial pillars in building out the Switch library. And of course, they were also supplemented by scattered entries into various other Nintendo series. In hindsight, it makes perfect sense why there was such a huge emphasis on their big boys, so to speak. Nintendo was coming off the heels of the massive failure of the Wii U, so they really had to leverage the popularity of their bigger properties to win people over this time around, perhaps leaving less room to experiment with smaller franchises than ever before. Understandably, Nintendo would want to prioritize what works first and foremost, but I guess I just have to wonder if leaning so heavily on the same IPs again for the next system, is that going to be enough to generate a whole new wave of excitement? Maybe. It's entirely possible, and maybe that would be enough for Nintendo to appeal to the people that they need to appeal to, I mean, they've been doing it for decades, so personally speaking, I'm craving a bit more. Despite understanding the reasoning for the games Nintendo decided to make this generation, I can't help but feel like there was a bit of a missed opportunity to dig deeper into their reservoir of IPs this generation. Something that might end up being rectified with the Switch 2, but I'll get into that in a minute. That's not to say Nintendo didn't push for any of their smaller IPs on Switch. Metroid and Pikmin, for instance, have historically never been major sellers and yet managed to put out their biggest selling entries on Switch. Fire Emblem and Xenoblade both had a few titles on Switch, and neither of those series have ever sold substantially in the past either. And yet, success on Switch? Do I even need to mention Animal Crossing? A significant portion of Nintendo's first-party output sold really well simply on the basis that it was on Switch. It's crazy to think that there could have been potential for some of their other older series to have a new lease on life if they had just gone ahead and put something out there. I gained a whole new appreciation for the Wario Land series in 2023, so count me in for a new one of those. Punch-Out would be an awesome series to make a return now that Nintendo owns Next Level Games. I know that Star Fox has had a rough go, but I think that with a proper reimagining, there's still potential. Nintendo might feel differently after Star Fox Zero, but if you ask me, it's all about the approach. Making Star Fox 64 for the 10th time is probably not the way to go about it. And it's crazy that out of all the games Nintendo could have brought back, F-Zero was the one to get a bit of a test run in F-Zero 99. To my understanding, it performed decently. Of course, it was free for online subscribers, so not sure how great of a metric that would be for a full-fledged new entry, but I digress. Suffice to say, it's probably too late for these guys on Switch, but here's the neat part. According to GamesIndustry.biz, Nintendo has been in deep conversation with at least 3 studios about making new games based on Nintendo IP. The quote reads, "I also know that Nintendo is actively meeting with independent developers to find new partners. Some of that is around publishing indie games, which Nintendo does from time to time, but it's also seeking studios that could work on some of its IP. If this is true, big if, this would honestly be such a brilliant way to get some new titles in development for games that Nintendo just simply doesn't have the development teams for at the moment." And it's not like this would be a new thing, Nintendo has worked with a lot of other third-party studios over the years for games like Hyrule Warriors and Smash Brothers, Mario plus Rabbids. Going back further, there were games like F-Zero GX, Star Fox Adventures, and Assault, pretty much everything in the Donkey Kong series. But I especially think there's some big potential in lending out some of their IPs to indie devs. The indie scene is where creativity knows no bounds, man. And who knows what kind of fresh ideas indie teams could bring to the table. Just look at something like Pizza Tower, a game that took inspiration from the Wario Land series that injected layers of creativity to turn it into something fresh and new. Now imagine Pizza Tower, but Wario Land. Mail me a check later, Nintendo. Okay, my point is that an indie team with a vision like the Pizza Tower guys had for their game, injected into various Nintendo properties, could be the breath of life that a lot of us have been waiting for. And it doesn't necessarily need to be an indie team either, I'm just talking. I think to help set the Switch 2 library apart from Switch, this would be an excellent step. More teams developing for Nintendo obviously just means more games, and you can never have too many games. And Nintendo's most valuable bases are covered by their own internal teams. For a company as wealthy and successful as Nintendo, rolling the dice and bringing back or reimagining some of their older properties is worth the gamble, if you ask me. Worst case scenario of bringing Ice Climbers back for a new entry, for instance, is that it totally flops. Womp womp. Oh no, Ice Climbers flopped. Now how will these 30 new Mario games ever help us recover? Oh wait, they totally fucking will. But hey, best case scenario is that Nintendo finds the right team with the right drive, passion, and vision to realize a modern version of the Ice Climbers, and then suddenly they have a new modern classic to utilize down the road. A happy ending for the Ice Climbers community. Now for all we know, Nintendo might just be looking for new teams to crank out new Mario spin-offs. That would not be a huge shock, but I would like to hope that there is some internal initiative to bring back some of their older series. Ice Climbers is probably not one of them though. I'm sorry, Climber Crew. Bringing back some old stuff is really just one of the ways that Nintendo could freshen up their catalog on the Switch 2. Shaking things up with their currently existing properties is something that I would also love to see. Nintendo does this every now and then, see Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Kirby's Forgotten Town, Mario Wonder, but I think they could still do more. Here's a big one: make less Mario. Okay. Realistically, this is not going to happen. That's like asking a butter company to stop making butter. It's just not gonna happen. But a part of me has always wondered what types of games Nintendo could make if they didn't always have so many of their teams focused on Mario all the time. But rather than hoping or expecting them to dial down their Mario output, I think maybe they could simply just freshen up their approach to the Mario spin-offs. I mean, after all, it's going to take a lot of work on their part to convince me the Mario sports titles are worth getting excited about again. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I don't know how excited anyone would be for another round of Mario Golf, Tennis, and Strikers, but if they shook up the gameplay enough and didn't undercook them next time, maybe they'd have something. Rather than expecting Camelot to pump out another Tennis or Golf for the Switch 2, why not have them take a crack at a new sport, like hockey or football, or heck, even just a new spin-off title altogether, like Mario Cooks a Big Bowl of Pizza Pasta. Who knows, it could work. It also has a chance of not working, but wouldn't you rather them take a crack at something new rather than getting the 100th Mario Golf entry? I know I would. This is kind of a sentiment that I feel like could apply to a lot of the Mario lineup of games at the moment. I won't go through them all, but just as another example, let's look toward Luigi's Mansion. I like that series. Luigi's Mansion 3 was an excellent entry, but I'm sorry. I think it would be kind of lame if Nintendo bought Next Level Games just to turn them into the Luigi's Mansion factory. If Luigi's Mansion 4 is their next big project, unless they really shake up the formula somehow, I don't think it's going to be nearly as exciting for me the fourth time around. It would feel like Nintendo is just doing more of what's expected of them, and while that's not always a bad thing, I think Nintendo should work on investing into new ideas as much as nurturing select old ones, even if it's just more Mario. I mean, come on, Luigi's Mansion 4 might be kinda neat, but what if they tried their hand at a new Luigi spin-off series? Like Luigi's Cyber Funky Fling. Luigi is trapped in a digital Tron-like reality and has to face off against viruses to save the Mushroom Kingdom's new social media app, Face Shroom. Look, they're the idea guys, not me. But hopefully you can see where I'm coming from. Something like that would catch a lot more eyes than the fourth Luigi's Mansion game. At least for me, I don't know, maybe I'm alone on that. Just look how well received games like Mario Odyssey and Mario Wonder were. I know it's probably not possible or realistic for Nintendo to take such a bold approach like they do with their main games to every single spin-off series they own, but I think to keep things fresh and interesting for the Switch 2, some shakeups are gonna be necessary. For my money at least, whatever that's worth. I know I'm putting a big emphasis on Mario, but well, that's because Mario takes up so much real estate in the Nintendo software lineup, and it's probably not gonna be slowing down. So hopefully they can at least find ways to keep it fresh and interesting next time around. Kirby is always doing some weird shit with its spin-offs, no notes there. Keep being weird, Kirby. Zelda needs to move on from Hyrule Warriors. It's time for, Hyrule Souls. Yeah, that's it. Alright, well, Zelda is kind of a special case. They tend to focus more on remakes and re-releases for this series, and I can't imagine that this will change much going forward. All I can really say is that I hope Nintendo finds it within them to develop new 2D-styled Zeldas to go along with everything else. I really quite enjoy them, and it's been too long since the last brand new one. Pokemon! I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what happens. I'm done with Pokemon. Scarlet and Violet were way too busted for me to bother keeping up with that series anymore, you know. Game Freak needs to go back to the drawing board. It's time to clean your shit up. Aside from these major franchises that get multiple entries per system, spin-offs, remakes, or otherwise, I think there's still more that can be done. Smash Ultimate is by far my most played Switch game, you know, had a great time with it. My dream character was finally realized this generation, and well, it's really called Ultimate for a reason. I think it's time for a fresh approach to Smash 2. Sakurai has gone on record saying that it would be tremendously difficult to top Smash Ultimate's roster, and honestly, I don't think they should try. Personally, I think it's time to hit the reset button. Slash the roster. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but do it. Narrow things down a bit and shake up the movesets for the veterans who remain. The N64 cast have been rocking the same damn movesets for 25 years. Brand new movesets would do so much to make this series feel new again. There'd be plenty of room for newcomers then too. Dixie Kong anybody? Cranky Kong? Waluigi Kong? And hopefully a smaller roster would allow them the resources to be able to put some emphasis on a real campaign again. For a series so proud of being a massive crossover of gaming icons, they sure haven't done much with that concept. I want Subspace 2 is what I'm trying to say, okay? Okay, cool. Then there's Mario Kart. And I know that technically falls under the Mario spin-offs umbrella from earlier, but I feel like this is just sort of a unique case where, you know, it's been so long without a brand new entry that simply getting a brand new Mario Kart would be exciting in itself. I have little doubt that Nintendo is going to come out swinging when the next Mario Kart is ready though anyway. Mario Kart 8, especially with the DLC courses, really turned into Mario Kart Ultimate, so a shakeup to some degree would almost be necessary as it is. We'll see what happens, but not too worried about Mario Kart. I guess I'll kind of just go through a few more series here and say, keep them coming. I'm always down for more Metroid, and you know, they're so rare that I'm not pining for any major shakeups. Hopefully Mercury Steam is hard at work on the next 2D Metroid, and hopefully Prime 4 releases before I'm dead. Let's get another Pikmin before the end of the decade. Pikmin 4 was excellent. I'd love to see how they push this newly realized version of the series forward. And potentially with PS4 level graphics? My god, could you imagine? An Animal Crossing game that has longer term support would be great. And although I don't really give a single flying fuck about Fire Emblem or Xenoblade, keep them rolling too for the people who like them. I guess. Donkey Kong, please, please? Donkey Kong? Donkey? Conky Donk? Dong? I totally get that this is a huge wish list and probably unrealistic to an extent. Maybe to a big extent. But I can't help what I want to see out of this company, and I'm sure I'm not alone in many of my sentiments. I'm sure there's a few series that I forgot to mention, but I think I tackled the main ones that I want to see personally. Sorry, Splatoon fans, I don't care. Regardless of my own wants, I'm excited to see what Nintendo has in store for the next generation. Hopefully they can come out and surprise us in ways that we never expected. In a good way! In a good way, please. What games are you hoping for Nintendo to bring back for their new console? Are you excited for the next generation of games? You know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. I'll catch you guys in the next one.